Good afternoon, happy Lord's Day, and I cannot encourage you strongly enough to please watch the 7 episodes, which I'm only on number 5, or I think I just am finishing number 5, of The Religion Business, and it is available on thereligionbusiness.com. I believe I will put it in the notes, but I just can't do justice to even share with you adequately enough how much this applies to the Lord's recovery. And I took a bunch of pages of notes, but I'm not sure how to even capture it for you. So please watch it. Maybe I'll just read a few notes. Tithe in the church age was begun as a Roman Catholic church requirement. Only the rich had a Bible. The ordinary person could not read. The literacy rate was below 6%. And people didn't travel beyond a 40-mile radius typically. So the most influential person was the local priest, who was under, of course, and in full allegiance to the Pope. This was a very corrupting system. Countries were controlled by the Catholic Church, and the further higher up, the more corruption. Soaking in riches was commonplace, so being extremely wealthy. Even today, there's hierarchy, there's competition. Young pastors are validated by the numbers and by the money they bring in. And true shepherds are demoralized. And even the successful, quote, successful young pastors often get burned out. It has become grotesque. It messed up the opportunity for people to be able to see Jesus. So when the Reformation occurred, that was the birth of church marketing itself. Tithing was not something that Martin Luther believed in, but actually he explicitly said that tithing is not for the church. But many church leaders don't follow that principle. The Reformation introduced choice of religion and of church. And choice of religion and choice of church was a factor in the birth of the church marketing itself. So in October of 1517, Martin Luther addressed indulgences with his 95 Theses. He addressed religion as a financial scam. The transmission of information rapidly over a large space in stable form resulted from the invention of the printing press, as we know, and one no longer needed someone to tell them what was in the Bible. People could read the Bible for themselves, and I feel like this is a common thread of concern in the Lord's recovery, is that you're encouraged to read the life studies and the interpreted word, but not the Bible itself as much. Martin Luther addressed indulgences, which had become a major pressure on people because the Pope had become bankrupt due to military campaigns and the funding of elaborate buildings, specifically St. Peter's in Rome, and the hiring of artists, major artists, because art had become the propaganda tool, or a propaganda tool. People went to church for the best music, to see the best sculptures and the best paintings. But Martin Luther spoke against this scam of selling indulgences, which were not in the Bible. Indulgences were not in the Bible, nor are training fees, nor is charging money to hear God's word being spoken. Guess what? As you know, Martin Luther was excommunicated from the Catholic Church. He mainly spoke up against financial corruption and was excommunicated. Reminds me of Terry Reisenhoover, who shared that if he wouldn't be silent about financial corruption with Daystar, because he was the accountant, then he would be excommunicated. And he was excommunicated because he chose the truth. Similar to Martin Luther. Thank you, Brother Terry. Okay. So churches had to start marketing themselves with this freedom of choice. They talk about Ravi Zacharias, the whistleblower named Ruth, raised questions and realized her questions were unwelcome. He surrounded himself with family, friends, and wealthy donors. Ruth had come from politics, where spinning messages, financial corruption, and manipulative tactics are common, but she found herself in Christian ministry doing the exact same things, or being required to do the exact same things if she were to stay in favor with a well-respected Christian leader. Do you have to spin messages? Is there financial corruption? Are there manipulative tactics? Any leaders in the Lord's recovery? Yes, absolutely. The fermentation of the present rebellion is a spinning of messages. It's not true. Same with response to recent accusations and other publications. Shepherdingwords.com, spinning of messages. There's lots of financial corruption and manipulative tactics, and people who speak up become excommunicated. Okay, so Ruth realized with Ravi Zacharias' group that the priority was to protect the brand at all costs, to keep the ship from sinking, not to find out the truth, to hear or to care for victims, or to hold leadership accountable. And they covered it all up by saying, you are doing this for God. They accused her of building a dossier to bring down Ravi, that she was mentally unstable, that she was tired and emotional, and a step away from insanity when she was speaking out or questioning about the real situation, which included sexual scandals and a lot of financial corruption. So credibly accused leaders were covered up, and instead truth tellers were silenced. The ministry continued to go on. Donors said this is spiritual warfare. Of course God haters would hate Ravi Zacharias. So he was basically just made, of course, if you're for God, then you're going to have haters. This is persecution. It's spiritual warfare. We heard the same thing regarding the Living Stream ministry and Witness Lee. Ravi was a serial sexual predator that had harmed scores of women around the world for decades. And I would just insert, Philip Lee was a serial sexual predator that harmed scores of women and minors around the world for decades and was never held accountable because his father, Witness Lee, was considered the minister of the age and was completely followed blindly. This Ravi Zacharias situation is not an outlier. It's not an anomaly. It's a much larger problem that starts as governance issues with lack of accountability, a board that is opaque, friends on the board, major donors on the board, people getting perks by their closeness to celebrity. The fox is guarding the hen house. So freedom of religion resulted in religion and churches becoming a consumer product. Martin Luther used the printing press to spread his thinking, which had massive impact. The church's use of technology has been growing and growing. This is one of the key factors the church has used to spread its identity in the West. So housing allowances. He talks about housing allowances, and I would just like to ask, what are the housing allowances for anyone associated with Living Stream Ministry or the Association of Churches with the Lord's Recovery? Is there a housing allowance for any leaders? It's all about the money. The Catholic Church could tax. All the power was siloed at the top. The Catholic Church had political control. The laymen had to drive everything up the value chain to the few leaders that controlled the resources and the power. Everyone downstream had to have faith in leadership. We have created many versions of similar institutions with no accountability. The documentary says in the U.S. we have 400,000 mini Vaticans where all money, power, and resources go to the top and everyone else just has to have faith. The church increasingly has become something people can buy and buy into, something that has to get out of the way if it interferes with leaders making money, with corrupt leaders making money. Then the church, including whistleblowers, truth tellers, members who want to know the truth, they have to get out of the way. And so if you watch this series with Nathan Apfel, The Religion Business, you will see how unwelcome Nathan is in wealthy organizations because he questions where the money is going, etc. And I just would like to ask again of the Lord's Recovery leaders, please explain where the millions of dollars donated for Linko went. Please explain that. Because what I read was no one even in Taiwan or the U.S. really knew Philip Lee was in charge of it all, and no one really knows where that money went when Linko, that project that had raised millions of dollars, ended up being a no-go because they lacked the permits to build. So where did all the millions of dollars go? Are there housing allowances for these leaders in the Living Stream Ministry or the churches? So before I go writing today, I just want to make sure that this video is clear. We know that the papal system was degradation. There was one person, an unquestionable authority, a man. Accusing or questioning him could result in excommunication and even death. He was very wealthy. He could charge believers money for, quote, spiritual favors. And he controlled everything, mainly because practically there wasn't the printing press and people were illiterate. But I feel, ironically, the Lord's Recovery, ironically called the Lord's Recovery, has reverted back to that, where there's a group of brothers at the very top. If you question them, you can be excommunicated. You can be accused of all kinds of things that are false, and that there isn't transparency financially. And if there are sexual scandals, people are not allowed to talk about them, or you turn the other way because you benefit from this system in some way, either by your proximity to the leaders, by financial support, or it's your identity. But shouldn't our identity be godly? Shouldn't our identity stand against anything that is related to sexual abuse or financial corruption? Please watch the religion business. And I hope that people would share from that.